Okay, now that we are capturing client scopes correctly, you can see we can add one, we can delete it, we can edit it, and when I click create, you can see things are being emit back to the parent component. We're ready to create our second type here. So if I look at my models for client implicit here, we did client scopes. The next one is client cores origin. So we're going to make an ng generate component called shared modals client cores origin modal. And then I also want to add in here a ng generate component called shared client cores origin with an S. So we can use scope as the guide and just copy this one right in. And this is going to be called client cores origins. Add cores origin. And now when I look at a cores origin, it's only got a client ID and an origin URI. And that's it. So this is a edit origin URI, edit origin, edit cores origin, and we're going to pass in the origin URI, and a delete cores origin. And that's it. And so now for the TypeScript, I want to have an input here of a client ID. These displayed columns of my origin, it was called a origin URI, edit cores origin, and then delete cores origin. My data source is client cores origin. My selected scopes are I can actually scrap these. Like that. And then this one, we want to get all of these and then push it on like that. Like this one. And then this one here is down here. I'm going to do this as a get instead, and it's going to be a get selected client scopes is an client scope array. All you're going to do is return this. And we're just going to call this selected scopes. Like that. Up here, we don't need this one. So up here we can say const for my selected scopes equals this dot selected scopes. I'm going to go back. I don't like any of this. Hey there, Synthology. How are you doing? Welcome to the channel. If you have any questions what I'm working on, please don't hesitate to pop them into the chat. All of these are doing that same piece of code. So I should just be able to do a get selected scopes is a I client scope event like that. Just do a return of this. Like that. Cool. Let's see if that works. Before I go any further, though, I need to edit this one. So we have origin URI edit, right? That's good. We add in there. We need to have our output event like that. And it's going to be a I client origin like that. We add in the emitter and our input. We want this to extend my base component, which means we need to have this constructor in here. I don't want to override ng-init. Okay, when I do this and I have my assign scopes, I want to do a client scopes is an I client scope array. And all this is my super, oh, I'm sorry, this is a assign client cores origins. So if I look in the base component, we don't have that yet. So I need clients cores origins subscription and a clients cores origins. And then we're going to do a this dot client cores origins equals this dot store, and we want to select the cores origins, and we want to subscribe on the client cores origins of the I client cores origin array, and we want to do this dot assign client cores origins of my client cores origins. Before I forget, we need to unsubscribe it. And then we need to have the assign cores origins, which is a client cores origins array. Equals that. So now we're going to do a super, and this is called assign cores origins. And I want to do a assign from my client cores origins. And now I want to say const, and we want to have a get down here of my selected cores origins, and this is a I client cores origin array, and I want to do a return, and it's a this dot client cores origins dot filter the ones where my client ID is equal to this dot client ID. And then we're going to do a this.data source.data equals my selected cores origins. And then I want to do a origins selected event. And do a next on my selected cores origins. We're going to do the same thing for this add scope, edit scope, and delete scope. So we'll just copy it in. So this is a add cores origin. And this is going to be a I client cores origin modal data. And this is a I client cores origin array. I client cores modal data. And this is going to be origin URI is the undefined. My existing cores origins are this dot selected scopes, which is this dot client selected cores origins. And then we have a client cores origin create modal, which is a client cores origin modal component, which we pass in this data. And after we close this, we get back out one of these data. And then I'm going to create here a I client cores origin. And then we're going to do a selected cores origins as selected cores origins. We're going to push on the new origin, set the data source, and then do my cores event like that. Okay, we have another one here for edit cores origin. And this is called origin URI. And this is the selected cores origins, selected cores origins. And I want to get the one where the origin URI is equal to this one. And now here, this is a client cores origin modal data. Like that. My existing is going to be the filter where my cores origins and my origin URI does not equal to origin URI. This is a client cores edit modal. And then here, I want to say my selected cores origin dot origin URI equals result dot origin URI. And then the data source is the selected cores origins, and then my event, we want to do the same ones. Okay, we got one more to do, which is this delete cores origin. And this is selected origins and selected origin. Like that. We're going to confirm the cores origin URI. And then we'll add in this confirmation modal. And if it's done, then we want to do the selected origins index of the selected origin. Like this. Ta-da, and we're done. So that's the cores origin one now. I need to add it to the app module. And then in the implicit, I want to add another one here for the app cores origins. Client cores origins. We want that client ID. This is my event. Client cores origin change. And it's a client cores origins. It's just this dot selected cores origins equals client cores origins. And that's it. So now you can see we have our cores origins. It doesn't have the CSS, so let's add that in. Origin URI, edit origin URI, and delete. Okay, we'll add in a cores origin here. Here's the client cores origin model works. But that's it. When you click the add, it does add cores origin, which is launching the component. Yeah, you can do it all with the origin URI, so we don't need an ID. So in the modal, this is what I got to do. We're going to add this. Edit a client cores origin. This is called origin URI. On no click, on save click. And then in the TS, we don't need the on init. We need to add in these. This is a iClient cores modal data. This is a origin URI and an existing cores origin. This is iClient cores origin. And if this is a existing origin where the origin name does not equal that, then we're good. Cool. That's it. We can add one. There it is. We can edit it. Okay, so it's not working because we're no longer storing those selected scopes and we're modifying that collection. So I want to say selected scopes here is an iClient scope array. And then down here we can get rid of it. And now I can say this dot selected scopes equals client scopes dot filter the ones where the client ID equals this dot client ID. Same thing here. This dot selected scopes. Same thing on the edit. And same thing on the delete. We got to do the same thing on the origins. So we want to say selected cores origins is an I client cores origin array. And this is going to be client cores origins dot filter the ones where the client ID equals this dot client ID. Like that. So now we can do this as a test. I can edit it. I can delete it. I don't understand why I can't find it. I don't understand what's wrong with that. Try this one. That works. Yeah, everything's working fine. And when I do the save, we do get them firing back. So that's done now as well. One thing I want to do for the styling on this is underneath client implicit. I want to do a div class equals, and we want to say that this is a flex horizontal container. And then in my styles.css, I can add this one in as a flex horizontal container as a row. There. And if I look at my Flexbox, I want flex wrap to be true. Better. Cool, because we want that to wrap. Okay, let's keep going. We have another one here for client implicit, and this is a great one to start because we'll get all of them done at one time. If I look at my models, we have a client redirect URIs and client post logout redirect URIs. So let's do each of these. We can batch them together and do them all at once, or we can do them separate. We'll do a ng generate client redirect URIs, and then an ng generate modal client redirect URI modal. And then we need another one for the post logout redirect URI modal. And then the like that. Okay. So now when I look at my client cores origins, we can copy this into my redirect URIs HTML. And this is called client redirect URIs. And this is add redirect URI. And this is called a, and we're going to look at the model for this. Just a redirect URI. And this is a edit redirect URI, and this is a delete redirect URI. Edit redirect URI and a delete redirect URI, and this is called a redirect URI. Okay, we're going to do the next one as well, all in one push. It's post logout redirect URI, easy enough. Post logout redirect URI. This is edit post logout redirect URI. And then the same thing here for the post logout redirect URI. That's it. Okay. The next one is the TypeScript. We're going to just copy this in. to the client redirect URI here. We're going to add in the input, the redirect URI, edit, redirect URI, and delete redirect URI. This one needs to extend my base component. And this is a iClient redirect URI. And this is a selected client redirect URIs. iClient redirect URI with this event emitter like that. Called my redirect URI selected event. So this one is assign redirect URIs, which is a redirect URIs here as a iClient redirect URI. And then we're going to say the selected is the redirect. It's going to be a redirect URIs filter. It's going to be this selected one, and then we're going to do the event. This is the add redirect URI. Now we need to add in a new type here. We'll do two, one for the iClient redirect URI modal data, which is a redirect URI, and an existing redirect URIs. And then we need to do one more for the post logout redirect URI. So this is a iClient redirect URI modal data, and this is a client redirect modal data. And then we're going to do a client redirect modal component. And we're going to pass in this data. Call it a client redirect create modal. And when that's done, we're going to pass back out this result. And this is going to be a iClient redirect URI. Like that. This is a edit redirect URI. Selected redirect URI. This dot selected client redirect URIs where the redirect URI is equal to this one. This is a client redirect modal data. Client redirect modal data. This is existing redirect URIs. Like that. Then we're going to open it with this data. And this is called a client redirect URI edit modal. And then the last one here is the delete redirect URI, which is a redirect URI here. Selected redirect URI. And we want to get the one where the redirect URI equals redirect URI. Then we're going to get the confirmation island. Would you like to delete the redirect URI called this one? And if it is true, okay, so here, this is my selected client redirect URIs of my selected redirect URI. And then we're going to select this one. The data source is this one, and then the event. Okay. We're going to copy this whole thing into the post logout redirect URIs. And we want this to do a extends base component. And then we can also copy all of these. So this is a post logout redirect URI, post logout redirect URI, post logout iClient, post logout redirect URI. Like this. All that looks good. This is a assign post logout redirect URIs. And then we're just assigning them here. Okay. This is a add post logout redirect URI. Client post logout redirect URI create modal. Like that. Almost done with this. Okay, this is the edit, post, logout, redirect URI. We want to get the selected clients where the post, logout, redirect URI equals this one. We want clients, post, logout, redirect URIs. Like that. Almost done. This is this one. Dot your post redirect URI is that. And then you want to do your selected and then your event. Last one. Selected post logout client redirect. Yeah, we got to move that word to be after client. This is, or you would like to delete the post logout redirect URI with a confirmation. And if it is, we want to do the selected post logout redirect URIs like this. And pass in that one. Okay, those two are done. So now we need to do the modals, which goes really fast. So we'll look at the client scope and we will steal. Oh wait, before I go any further, I need to look at the CSS. And we need to add this stuff in on the post logout redirect URL. So post logout redirect URI. And then the edit and the delete. And then I need to do the same thing on the redirect URIs. Okay, so over here, client scope modal, we're going to put this on the redirect URI. Create a client redirect URI. And this is called a redirect URI. And then this is a back, and this one is a save. So over on the scopes, there's no CSS, and we can just copy in this. We can get rid of the implements that, and we can add in the dialog reference and our iClient redirect modal data. This is a existing client redirect URIs. And this is a redirect URI. There's no ng on init anymore. This is a redirect URI. And this is the existing, has a redirect URI like that. Now we're going to copy this whole thing. and dump that into the post logout redirect URIs TS. Doesn't need this. This is the modal type. This is the type of data that we're dealing with. Like this. This is a post logout redirect URI. And this is a post logout redirect URI here, here. This is the existing one, like that. We'll need to steal this and dump this into here. Post logout redirect URI. And that's it. Finally, we need to, in my app module, add these both in here as a client redirect URI modal and a client post logout redirect URI modal component. And then in the client implicit page, I need to have a on client redirect URI change, which is a client redirect URIs. Like that. Client redirect URI array. And this one is a post logout redirect URIs. On client post logout redirect URI change is a client post logout redirect. Like client post logout, like that. And now finally, over here, we need to add in the client redirect URIs which has a we'll just call it redirect URIs event. On client redirect URIs with a plural. We'll just do it with a singular change. And the last one is a client post logout redirect URIs, which is this one. And my event is this. And that's it. So now when I look at this screen, we see all 4 of them. If I try here, it works. I can add it. I can delete it. I can add it. I can change it. If I was to do a test and then I add another test, it won't let me do it. So on the edit, we can get rid of this. So it's that one. This one. This one. This one. And that's it. Good. Perfect. When I'm creating a new one of these, I want to say our validation's active. What is that for? We're going to say that all of these are true to begin with. And that's it. So just to confirm, if I was to look at my client implicit, client name, client ID, token, issuer, audience, the bools, our selected scopes, so now we're all the way down at the client. So we want to say validate all data is correct. And then I want to say const request is a new client implicit create request. And this has got a bunch of fields in it, right? Allow remember login is this dot allow remember login. Enable local login. Enable external login. Validate issuer. It needs client course origins is this dot selected course origins. Client post logout is this dot selected post logout redirect URIs. Client redirect URIs is going to go to this dot selected client redirect URIs. Client scopes goes to this dot selected scopes. Client ID is this dot client ID. Client name is this dot client name. Grant ID is this dot grant ID. Token expiration in minutes is this dot token expiration in minutes. Issuer is this dot issuer, and audience is this dot audience. And then what I want to do is in my HTTP service, I want to do a new create client implicit, which is going to be a client, we'll just call it a request, which is an client implicit create request. And it's going to be this .http client.post, and it's going to go to clients implicit, and we're going to post the request. And then I want to subscribe onto the result here, which is a client like this. And if my result is not equal to null, then I want to do a this.store.dispatch new create client of my result. Now, I want to do a this.router dot and I want to navigate it to clients. So now when I look at my network and I do a test and a test and a fa3 and https add test.test.com, and we're going to say fakeaudience.com, and we'll add a scope of test scope and a CORS origin of test CORS origin and a redirect URI and a post logout redirect URI, and I save it. I get a 400. It didn't find it, which is right. My payload looks good. So on the back end now, underneath my clients, I want to have a HTTP post, which is going to be a route of implicit. And it's going to be called create implicit asynchronous. And it's going to pass in here a client implicit create request or something like that. And if my await data access layer dot create client asynchronous of my request. Then I want to return, we're going to say var client equals this. If my client does not equal to null, then I want to return an OK of the client. Otherwise, I just want to return a bad request of the request. So in here, we're going to add a create client asynchronous, which is going to return a client. And I want to pass in here a client implicit create request. One thing I wanted to do was in my UI, I've created these models for the DTOs, and I can move those to core. Okay, so if I look now in the interface, we need to have a public virtual asynchronous task of a client called create client asynchronous, passing in a client implicit create request called a request. Lucky for me, I already have this done. So if I look in the web app, underneath my services, I should have a, right here, this. And that's it. In this one, I want to return a, if my await context.save changes asynchronous is greater than 0, then I want to return my client. Otherwise, I want to return null. Got to add the DTOs here for each of the controllers where they got moved. Just a few more. There it is. And now in my controller, underneath clients, I want to see this get hit. Create client implicit test 5 test and we hit create. Clients implicit 400. One or more validations, it failed. The JSON value could not convert. Token expiration to 5 minutes. Hey there, Wandable. How are you doing? Thank you so much for that raid with a party of 11. How are you guys doing? In case you don't know me, my name is Rob. I'm streaming during the week, a little bit during the weekend. We're working on our server called oauthserver.net. The OAuth server has been completed and we're getting ready to deploy it. It should be easy to spin up. You just run a Docker container and use a connection string to point it to the database if you're choosing. And then we're creating a UI for it in Angular CLI so that you can add and modify clients. And that is what we're working on now. Most of them are from Begin Bots raid. That's cool, man. Thank you. I appreciate the raid and paying it forward and everything. So here, this looks good. The problem was that in the create request, this is an integer. And here it says it's a number. Because I need to do a Angular CLI input type number. Type. I don't want this. I know exactly what I'm looking for. Is the CLI written in Angular or is it driving a form? The CLI is written in Angular. It's Angular there's Angular JS, right? And that was the first one. And then anything past Angular 2 and beyond that, they refer to as Angular 2. And I call that Angular CLI. And it does use a command line interface to host. It uses NPM. Yeah. Type is text. know I have these things in other places. Let me go look over here in this app. So Angular CLI has this component line interface. So for example, I can do ng-serve, which will run the application, and it's using npm or the Node.js as the web server for this. It's also using Webpack, so it will automatically update on the pages once it's been hosted. You can see over here I've been scaffolding components in a different one. So ng generate component for models and for different screens. That's where the CLI is coming from. So we're going to look at this project real quick, and if I look at my account for I don't have any. Interesting. Well, you're using it on your wager panel, so that would be it's the queue component. When you click the add quantity to song queued here, it's going to send me to this upvote model. So in my modals, underneath upvote, quantity is a number. It just knows that it's supposed to be a number. So why is that happening over here? Oh, the CLI is the general environment, not making CLIs by rendering. Yes, exactly. You've got it. So token expiration is in minutes. Token expiration is a number. That's a number. When I look at this request that's being sent out, we'll add in some more stuff in here. It's giving me this validation error for token expiration in minutes is coming in as a number or as a string. So we're going to look up Angular CLI input number comes in as string. This is horrible. I don't believe it's any of this. Let's try this. Okay, that time, because I had it as a number, it did work. Now I have my validations here. I don't have a grant ID assigned, so that won't work. So let's fix the grant ID. So this is no longer an input. If I look at my modal for the client create, I want to add a service in here. Call it a ng generate service, and I want to call it a cache service. Try that again and put it inside of the services folder. ng generate service services cache. So in the cache service, I want to say we're going to store the grant ID as a string. This is a really dirty trick. And I'm just going to do a store grant ID. Like that, and then we can do grant ID equals grant ID. That is it. And then you also want to do a get grant ID, which is going to do a const grant ID equals this dot grant ID, and then this dot grant ID equals undefined, and then you're going to return your grant ID. And then we can make this a private. Okay, and so now in the component here, when I'm going to inject here my private cache service. And so when you do this, we want to do this dot cache service dot store grant ID as this dot grant ID. And so when you're loading the implicit here, we'll do it in the constructor. I'll do protected cache service is a cache service. And then even before any of this, I want to do this dot grant ID equals cache service dot get grant ID. Let's try it again. Just a second to load. There it is. Create, implicit, test, 5, na. Okay, we look at the request. These post, logout, redirect URLs, scopes, cores, origins are null. So we need to look at that. But now when I click through it, it should we'll try it again. Watch that payload on the way out. Okay, my outgoing payload. Client redirect URLs, client scopes. Why isn't it getting the complicated object here? When I look back here at my cache service, we can get rid of that. So is that happening because this needs to be lowercase? Because that shouldn't be happening. That should be working just fine. Does it need to be marked as serializable or something? So we're going to look up ASP.NET core HTTP not deserializing nested objects. Well, we're going to just cheat and use this. So we're going to add in here. And Newtonsoft JSON.NET 3 Core 1. We want to install this package on the UI. This one here. Okay. And now we'll just try it again. Okay, and then we send it. Now I, in fact, get things correctly. Crazy. And now it's created the client. And then it should navigate me back to here. So then we're going to do a console.log of my result here. Now we see our new client. Looks like enable local login didn't take. Grant ID is here. Everything is populated, including the enable local login. Yep. And then it's going to create these things. returns the client. Says status self-referencing loop determined. So this has to return a client DTO. So we're going to create a new model in here, call it a client view model. And in this, I want to put in a client DTO called the client. I want to put in here a client scope DTO called clients scopes, a client redirect URLs called clients redirect URIs, a client post logout redirect URIs, and a client cores origin is the last one. If I look at the payload, this is the same object. So instead, I want to send a new payload. But I'm going to get that from my get client asynchronous of my GUID ID. And this is going to be a payload. So on this side, when we get our result back, this is actually going to be a I app state. And then I want to return my clients of 0. And then I want to do a result dot. Actually, we're going to do for each one of these result.clients.forEach. And then we're going to do this again, but for the cores origins. And then again for the post logout redirect URLs. And then again for the redirect URIs, and then for the scopes. So if I look at my reducers, I need to have a nope. I'm going to do this a different way. I'm going to save myself a whole bunch of time here. And instead of doing all of this garbage, I'm just going to do this. And so over here now, instead of doing this stupid function, you can just do a get payload. This needs to be a bool. Like that. See it work. And when you remove the client, it's also going to remove the associated records with the client because it's got, what is that called? Referential integrity. Well, I'm almost like every one of these, we should just return the payload. Because who cares? It's a small little app. It's not for anybody. Well, the remove is working, which is great. If I were to add one, and I save it, there's the new app with its redirect URIs. And we can see that they're all populated here. So right after this creates, it doesn't load the scopes, right? But no, it's there. It just needs to redirect away. So we'll make a new one here. Add in a bunch of stuff here. Save it. It navigates me back here. We let it build the client. Here it is. I click on it and everything is populated. Okay, what we need to do now is when we click on an implicit client, and we navigate here and we select everything, passing client ID, everything gets refreshed. I also want to say this dot selected scopes is equal to this dot client scopes dot filter, where my client ID is equal to this dot ID. This dot selected cores origins equals this dot client cores origins dot filter, where my client ID equals this dot ID. This dot selected redirect URLs equals this dot client redirect URLs dot filter, the client ID equals this dot ID. And this dot selected post logout redirect URIs this dot client post logout redirect URIs, and we want to filter where the client ID equals this dot ID. And so I want to say here, if my this dot ID and this dot ID does not equal to nothing, then I want to do an edit. Else, we're going to do this create. If I look at this, a interface iClient implicit update request extends my iClient implicit create request, and all I want to add in here is an ID. And then we want to do this update client implicit of my request, iClient implicit create request. It's an update request. And it's a this.htp client.put. And I want to put the client's implicit. And then I want to pass in the request.id for my request. And then we're going to subscribe on this. And all I want to do here is we're going to make a new function called set, or it's going to be a private set app state, which which is an I app state. Like that, and then that. And then one more time here. And we can move this to the bottom of the class. And now we can do a this dot http dot update client implicit of my request. So when I do this update, it's an HTTP put of the ID. Like that. And now this is going to be a update client asynchronous. Client implicit update request. And the only thing we're going to add in here is a ID. So now we can add the update request. And so what I want to do is I want to get my var client equals await my context.clients dot include the redirect URI, the redirect URIs, the CORS origins, the scopes, and we want to get the one where my ID equals my request.id. So if my client does not equal to null, then I want to do this, and I want to do client.client post logout redirect, and we're going to clear it. Client.redirect URIs, and we're going to clear it. Client.CORS origins, and we're going to clear it. Client.client scopes, and we're going to clear it. And then we're going to assign all of these values here. And then we're going to do a update of my client right after I do all of these. And then save it. So this is now a update client asynchronous, like that. Give it a try. Okay. Let's go ahead and delete this one. We're going to edit this one. I want to edit this scope to say scope 1. Interesting. When I run my update, it is scope 1. We get our payload. Now it's been updated to scope 1. It didn't get rid of the old one. Oh, it did. So when I click the edit button, on client scopes, selected scopes, gets assigned here. If I jump back out of this and check it again, and I just deleted it and saved it, it's still got it there. We're also going to say down here, if selected scope.id and selected scope.id does not equal nothing, then I want to do a this.store.dispatch a new delete scope. So we'll say remove client scope. And then down here, remove client scope as a ID. And then we have a remove client scope. And then in the reducers, case app actions dot remove client scope. Let's steal this here. Remove client scope. Like that. And then we'll try that. There it is. If I delete it, it's gone now. But I actually never saved it. Okay, so we're going to slightly change this. And what I want to do is in client implicit, I want to say ngIf equals ID and I don't know what I just hit on my keyboard, but I turned off all the lights. ID and my ID does not equal to nothing. Then we want to do these. This one I want to say ngIf equals there is no ID or ID is equal to nothing. This one is going to be update. So we will start the back end again. And we're going to do this correctly using Redux instead of what I was doing. So when I create a client, it should only show me these things. And then after I create it, I want to get the one, I want to say if my client doesn't exist, then I want to say client equals this dot clients dot find the one where the client name equals this dot client name. Hey, Misled Youth, how are you doing? We've created a server to replace Identity Server 4. It's called oauthserver.net. It's written in ASP.NET Core 3.1, but we're going to upgrade it to 5. I'm now adding an Angular CLI front end on it for adding clients. It's almost done. If I look at this again, it didn't create it. So there it is. SDF. Now, enable local login isn't getting set. Enable local login isn't getting set. Why isn't that getting set? In the DTO, enable local login. Hey Keith, almost. I've got it creating the clients now. But I'm going to change it to really rely on the Redux instead of these nested things that I'm doing. Still not returning problem details? No need for this app. This app is dirty, and quick. The OK object is the standard 200 that comes out of here, but I do know what you're talking about. I've seen those before. But there's no need. I don't need the stack trace or anything like that on them. This app is never meant to go into production. There we go. So if I take another one and I make an implicit client and I call it, say, Keith. Now it's created. It doesn't know that one. So back over here, we want to do this.id equals client.id. What's the return object that I need to return for them? But yeah, there's no need for this one. This is not an exposed API. And we'll make a new client here called test. Keith again. Click create. Creates it. Didn't update here. Return the payload. Assign the new clients. Get rid of this. Problem details. That's what I'm looking for. I've seen problem details get returned when it's with error handling. Okay, we'll create a new one here called Keith. And there it is, and now we can add the remainder of the pieces to it. So for example, in client scopes, I don't need this anymore, do I? And I don't need that anymore. So this is my selected scopes. And there's no more event. My existing scopes equals this.client scopes.filter where my client ID equals this.client ID. Yeah, anything that's not 200 or 300, that's where I've seen them. And then you get the stack trace, which is helpful. So when this is all done now, you're going to create this new scope like this. And then, instead of this, I want to do a this.http dot create scope, client scope. And that's it. And then this one, it's going to be your const selected scopes equals this dot client scopes dot filter where my client ID is equal to this dot client ID. Like that. My existing scopes are these. And then all I want to do is a this.http.update client scope of my selected scope. And then for the last one here is these. We want to get rid of it. When it's done, I just want to do that. Oh, no, I need to do a this.http.remove client scope of my selected scope.id. So now my HTTP service. Hey there, misled usage, misled youth. How are you doing? I apologize. I don't have my bot running at the moment. How are you doing this morning? So now we're going to move this here. And then when we get this back, it's just going to be a client. And then this one, we're just going to add the client. And this one, we're going to get a client back and do a store.dispatch new update client. This one down here is going to be a create. We're going to do it up a little bit higher. Create client scope of a request called a iClient scope create request. This HTTP client.post to my client's scopes. And you want to pass in the request. And then I want to subscribe on the client scope called iClient scope. And we're just going to do this.store.dispatch new create client scope of my client scope. Do it again for the update. An iClient scope update request extends this one, and it just has an ID in here. And we want to pass in here the request.id. Whoops. I'm using HTTP inside of components. What are you talking about? I have an HTTP service, and then I'm just using the service from within my components. My service is issuing everything out to the store. And then on my base class, I'm subscribing it. And I'm not having a hard time, Keith. This is very straightforward. I've done this a whole bunch of times. This application's almost done. This here is clients, scopes, request.id. We're passing in this one. I get back this, and I want to do a update client scope. And then I want to do the last one here is this one, which is a remove client scope, and we're going to delete client's scopes of the ID, and then this is a client scope. So now we need to go back into the app actions here, and over here under clients I have create, update, remove. That's right. Set, create, update, remove client. That's right. Set client scopes, add client scope. Update client scope. Down here we have the set client scopes. Add client scope is a add client scope like that. I need to have the update client scope. Here we go, like that. And then remove client scope. Down here we have set clients, grants. Here we go, we need add client scope, update client scope, and remove client scope. And in my one reducer, we've got remove, we've got to have update client scope, and I need to have a create client scope. Okay. When I look up here at the clients, we've got all four, which is right. So let's go ahead and do this create client. I need to change this to be a create. And that's just one. So we're going to add in this bit. So this is a add client scope state, create client scope, which is a client scope. And then we're going to do it here by my scope name. This is my update, which we can do from here. Update client scope new state. And then we're going to return my update client new state like that. That's it. Set, create, update, remove. Like that. So now back over here in my clients endpoint, my create, I want this to return a client DTO. Like this. And then we're just going to return it here. Create, update, does the same thing. Hello. I'm doing this because if you take a look at the Identity Server 4 GitHub, Right here, this message came up a couple months ago. As of October 1st, there's a new company. All new work is under this Duende identity server, which is a commercial license. So this is a bit of an issue for me as well as for other people who are dependent on identity server for a number of different applications. So this OAuthServer.net that we're creating, it's just something you can spin up with Docker, has a UI associated with it so you can get it configured, then turn off the UI. And it's just a exact replacement for identity server. And then here we want to return the DTO. Okay, I need another one here called Clients Scopes Controller. And this needs to go to Clients Scopes. And this is going to be the create. And this is going to be a client scope create request. And now in this data access layer, I need to have a task of a client scope DTO called create client scope asynchronous of a client scope create request. And then another one of a task of a client scope DTO called update client scope asynchronous client scope update request, which we'll create in just a minute. And then a task of a bool called a delete client scope asynchronous of a GUID. So in the core library, I can add in a client scope update request. Yes, this code is all available up on GitHub and it's public open source. And all the videos for this is also available up at youtube.pixelhorrorstudios.com. Okay. And so now I have the create asynchronous, which is a create client scope. I have the update asynchronous, which is a client scope update request. And then I have a delete, which is a delete client scope asynchronous. That's it. Now I need to update my service, right? So here, if I look at my startup, you do have client that goes to client DTO. So up here I can do a if await like that, then I want to return a mapper.map to a client DTO of my entity. Otherwise, I just want to return an all. Same thing here. And now we need to copy these and do this for the create client scope asynchronous of a client scope create request called request. We're going to add in the client ID as request.clientID. The scope name is request.scopename. The ID we don't know. In my create request here, I want to add a GUID for my client ID. And then this is client scopes. And then we're going to return it as a client scope DTO, like that. This is a update client scope asynchronous of this one. And this is going to be for another client scope. We're going to get it from clients scopes. And then I want to set the entity dot client ID is already set, so it's just scope name. And then my timestamp. Like that. And then we want to do if this, then I want to return a mapper.map to a client scope DTO of my entity. Otherwise, I just want to return null. The last one here is a delete client scope asynchronous. This is a client scopes. Like that, and like that. That looks done. So now I can run this. Cannot get. So if I look here at my models, this now needs to have a client ID, which is a string. Uses the wrong object. I client scope create request. App actions. Add client scope. It's a create client scope. There it is. Good. If I look at Keith, I can add a scope called that. Here it is. It gets created. It didn't. We'll check it again. Oh no, it got created, but it didn't register. So if I delete it, it worked. That worked. So it was only in the create. you never return it here. You want to do a return this. That would make a big difference with why that was working or not. So now I can say that. There it is. I can go back. I can reload it. You can see it here. There it is again. I can edit it. The edit didn't take. Go over in the edit. Didn't like this, so we're going to do a weird. We're going to do a const called request is a I client scope update request. And I want to say that in this we have a scope name is my result dot scope name. My ID is a result dot ID. It's a selected scope dot ID. And the client ID is this dot client ID. There it is for the update. I want to say if my ID equals my request.id. Oh, it's an update. Let's try it again. I need to reload the back end. All right. That's good. Now it's taking. If I do a reload, that looks good. And if I do a delete, that looks good too. Cool, so that's how we're going to do this for each one of these. So we need to finish up the other three. But in terms for me, I've been going for 4 hours. I need to call it for now. But we'll be back at, I'll say it's 12:30 now. So give me like an hour and a half. So we'll say 2 o'clock p.m. We'll be back. And what we're going to do then is we should be all done with the clients by that point. So the only remaining piece that we have is authorization for this, which we are going to use the role system built into ASP.NET, and then just something to assign roles. And then we're ready to package and deploy this. So thanks for staying with me today, guys. And I'll see you in just a couple hours. Thanks so much. And again, I put all these videos up at youtube.pixelhorrorstudios.com. And we also have that Discord at discord.pixelhorrorstudios.com. Thanks, guys. See you in a little bit.